Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Let me preface this by noting that this revenge was not my doing. At least, not exactly. It happened back in the 90s when I was in high school and centered around the type of school I attended. So, in case you weren't aware, it's very common in agricultural communities to have what are known as farmers' schools. That's not a technical term, but more of just something easy to define them. The schools are generally organized by the local farmers, and while you still study the various courses needed to get into college, you also study farming technology courses and get credit hours for work study, i.e. working on one or more farms. The area I lived in was surrounded by a number of large farms which grew cotton primarily. So during the year, we'd spend time out in the field both tilling, planting, and harvesting. One of the farms near the school was this 1,000-acre spread that, like the others, grew mostly cotton, though sometimes they rotated to soybeans or silage, basically corn but you don't harvest it. This farm had a long partnership with the school, so the students provided near-free labor for the farmer. The farmer leased this property from some out-of-state owner and paid them a portion of the revenue from the harvest. Imagine my surprise then, when I and many of my classmates arrived at the farm to do our work study, and the farmer instructed some to crew the sprayers and start spraying herbicide on the fields, while others, myself included, were to take tractors and discs and plow everything under. The farmer wanted every square inch of the fields returned to just dirt. We were shocked, to say the least, but after some discussion we set to work. It took us the better part of a weekend to do so, and when we were done the field was in a beautiful, if barren, state. The farmer thanked each of us personally and paid us about $500 each, quite the sum for a 90s high school senior. We returned to the school, told our headmaster that the contract was completed, and he informed us that the farmer would no longer be working with the school, and we'd be sent to one of the other larger farms for the rest of the year, and our work study. It was probably 2 or 3 months later before word started going around about why we'd been instructed to destroy the crop. Granted, these were just rumors, but based on how things turned out for the farmer, I suspect there's some truth to it. So, apparently the landowner had decided that he was going to not renew the lease the farmer had on the land. This lease renewal just so happened to fall a few weeks before harvest season would start. Given that the average cotton farm earns about $1,500 per acre, a 1,000-acre farm would easily net the owner $1.5 million, about $500K of that being pure profit. I don't know what the farmer's lease was, but it stands to reason that it wasn't anywhere near that. So this landowner had figured out a neat little trick. Let the farmer get a good crop planted, and then refuse to renew the lease. The farmer would leave the plants in the field, and the landowner would just need to pay some contractors to come harvest it, and they'd earn a profit. Since at the time the farmer's lease wasn't yet up, he decided to prevent that from happening. His act of revenge against the owner was to prevent them from cashing in on their hard work. Sure, it destroyed his farm, and he had to sell off most everything he owned to buy some property for himself. But he'd proved a point. The owner did try to sue the farmer, though the owner, really didn't have a leg to stand on, or so I was told. I think the court ruled that since the farmer was still under the lease when he had the land tilled under, then it was his property to do with as he wished, and thus the landowner couldn't tell him what to do with his property. I learned a rather valuable lesson from that man, beyond what I learned about farming. That lesson was never, ever cross someone with nothing to lose. Edit. Since it was brought up in the comments, let me add some details here. Cotton is one of the few crops which leave a negative nutrient value in the soil, meaning that after harvest, even if you till the dead plants under, or even if you till them prior to harvest, you won't have as much nutrients as you started with. That's why farmers will plant another crop, usually winter wheat, in place, and then till it under rather than harvesting it. This is something commonly called a green manure, but it works to put nutrients that the cotton pulled out of the soil back into it. While the ground wouldn't have been completely dead or sterile, Any crop planted on that tract of land without further treatment of the soil wouldn't have produced the same acre-per-acre yield that a comparable crop would have had he gone to harvest and planted the secondary crop, which means that the landowner would either have to plant the green manure and spend money that way, or pay by the ton to use artificial fertilizer. I have to preface this by saying this is my fiancé's family, so they're technically my in-laws. Because their extended family all lives in the area, and we've been together for many years, I'm a lot closer to them than typical future in-laws. The parents, aunts and uncles are generally all very devout Catholics and extremely homophobic, but their kids are all between the ages of 16 to 29 and have left the church. Two of our cousins who are sisters, aged 16, let's name her Jenna, and 22, let's call her Jan, are queer. Neither of them are out to their families except for the cousin's generation. Jan has a long-distance girlfriend in another country that she met during college. The girlfriend was an exchange student, and recently visited her under the guise of visiting a friend. Her mom is very paranoid and homophobic, and eventually confronted Jan, asking if the friend was gay, to which she said yes, and then asked if she was her girlfriend. She said no. Her mom kept pressing, and eventually Jan confessed they were dating. Her mom flipped out. Lots of screaming, things being thrown and smashed. She took her college diploma off the wall and threatened to smash it. She took her phone and read through her messages and forced her to break up with her girlfriend, essentially threatening to kick her out. Now Jenna, seeing her mom say and do abusive things to her sister, said, "Is now a good time to share that I'm also gay?" in almost comedic fashion. Needless to say, my fiancé and I received urgent texts from them letting us know they came out to their parents and it wasn't going well. We immediately replied, saying to come over, asking if they're okay and need anything, and offering our place for them to stay if they needed. They said yes, but were scared to come over for fear of making their mom even angrier than she already was. So they ended up not coming over. The next day, they pretended to go to work, school, and stopped by our place to cry, process, and talk. They shared that their mom took Jan's phone, read through all of her messages, and saw our group chat, and she was now mad at us for offering a place for them to run away to. She told them she doesn't want to come to our wedding anymore. We honestly don't really care, as the #1 priority for us is our cousin's safety. They shared how she's been verbally abusive their whole lives. Their aunt was torn between telling the other aunts and uncles about her kids coming out versus keeping it a secret to uphold the family reputation. We didn't think she'd actually tell them because she cares more about vanity. Fast forward to last night, we're about to watch House of the Dragon with my fiancé's parents, and my future mother-in-law gets a call from the said aunt, telling her that she's mad at us for meddling in family affairs and encouraging them to run away. She also apparently saw that some text messages between Jenna and us were in invisible ink. She wanted to switch to that because they know their mom was monitoring their phones. The aunt told my future mother-in-law that we taught them invisible ink. These are teenagers. They taught us invisible ink, and she thinks we're teaching these kids tools on how to sneak around their parents, and that we're condoning their behavior. So now my fiancé's parents are involved. My future mother-in-law then shared she's been at the receiving end of being ghosted by this aunt, and how there would be years of receiving the silent treatment. This aunt apparently missed all of my fiancé's graduations from elementary to college because of fights. She ended up crying because she doesn't want another conflict that would prevent her from seeing her brother, especially now because everyone's finally on good terms after all these years. She understands we were just trying to help, but now she's begging us to apologize to this aunt and make amends just for the sake of keeping the family together. Why do I suddenly have issues with an aunt-in-law? I'm not going to apologize for supporting our cousins after they went through a traumatic experience, and it's clear that my fiancé's mom is just trying to appease her sister-in-law to avoid conflict. But if we stand our ground, this could bring the extended family into another big fight, and they'll blame us for starting it. This could mean that my future mother-in-law could go months or years without seeing her brother, Or our cousin Jenna might be forbidden from coming over or seeing us, since she's still a minor. Edit. Thanks for the words of support, everyone. It's really reassuring and helping us hang in there. Also, I wanted to add that my fiance's parents are also homophobic, so this conversation and future conversations will be hard because they already have a bias. They agree with us providing a safe space for the cousins, but that's pretty much the extent of their support. My fiance is non-binary and not out to their aunts and uncles for this reason, so this whole situation has been pretty triggering for them. They came out to their parents years ago, but I think my future mother-in-law and future father-in-law honestly suppressed that memory because their parents never mentioned it and constantly misgender them. So a few days ago I was walking my dog down a road when suddenly I heard someone screaming and cussing at me from the house on my right. When I turned my head to look at what that was about, I saw the elderly man who owns the house rapidly approaching while still unleashing a verbal diarrhea of insults at me. No, I wasn't trespassing inside his property. The sidewalk was public space. When he was done, we exchanged the standard issued "go F yourself." And I thought that was the end of that. But no, that man decides that the next thing to do was to find out where I lived. So he orders his son, I think he was his son at least, to follow me while he got his bike ready. I mean, I can't be 100% sure that he had me followed, but then again, he was able to pinpoint exactly where I was without following me from the beginning. This guy, who I think was his son, looked like he got out in a hurry, was always looking in my direction. I saw him looking at me while on the phone, hidden behind a bush, and after that phone call, the entitled elderly appeared. Anyway, since I was suspicious of this guy, I took a detour for the joy of my dog. Seriously, my dog loves long walks, and after a little while after I saw that guy behind a bush, I heard more screaming and cussing from behind me. I turn around, and here is the elderly guy from before, getting down from his bike, unleashing another verbal diarrhea of insults at me. Only this time he included threats of suing me for vandalizing his property, and I had no clue what he was talking about. Call the police, and have me arrested on the spot for trespassing, which by this point we were nowhere close to his house. So good luck with that, having my dog killed. And all of this because in his head, me walking my dog on the sidewalk near his house, which may I remind you is public space, was like I trespassed in his property and vandalized it with the presence of my dog. Before someone asks, yes, when I walk my dog, I always carry the necessary stuff to clean up after it. Besides, my dog did nothing in front of his house. At the end of that, we both go our way, and luckily nothing else happened after that. But seriously, what the hell is wrong with some people? Also, I learned from the last exchange that the entitled elderly also has a dog, and that he is a model owner in his head, and the only thing I can say is, may God have mercy on that poor dog. So there I was, just minding my own damn business, pulling into the gas station to feed my thirsty car. The sun was shining, birds were chirping. It was a regular day in my life, you know. Little did I know, this day was about to take a wild turn, and not the good kind. I'm standing there, pumping gas, and out of nowhere, this tornado of entitlement and bad vibes swoops in front of my car. I'm talking about Karen, the queen of all things annoying. She parks her ride like she owns the damn place, and I'm left staring at her personalized license plate that probably says something like Queen Karen or Princess Pain in the Ass. Before I could even process what was happening, she's out of her car, marching towards the convenience store like she's on a mission to ruin someone's day. Spoiler alert, that someone was me. I'm thinking, what the actual heck just happened? Next thing I know, she's flipping her hair back like she's in some damn shampoo commercial and glances at me with those judgmental eyes. I can already tell she's got a problem. The kind that won't be solved with a group therapy session or a cup of herbal tea. But hey, karma has a way of hitting back harder than a wrecking ball, and just as she struts away, she leaves her car in gear. You can guess where this is going, right? My poor car becomes a sacrificial lamb in her circus of arrogance. Her car rolls back like it's auditioning for a fast and furious stunt, and bam, collision central right there at the gas pumps. The loud crunch echoes through the air, and suddenly everyone's eyes are on us. People are gasping, and I'm just standing there, looking at the mess that is now my once pristine ride. So, this is how my day starts. A collision with Karen, the self-proclaimed road queen. Buckle up, folks, 'cause it's about to get crazier than a cat riding a skateboard. Alright, so picture this. My car is bruised, her car's feeling a bit tender, and there we are, Karen and yours truly, about to engage in a verbal showdown that could put a UFC match to shame. I take a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, because, anger management classes are for wimps, right? I stroll over, hands in my pockets, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's got some insurance up her sleeve, or maybe she's gonna pull out a magic wand and fix this mess. Wishful thinking, I know. Hey lady, you mind explaining what the hell just happened back there? I start, keeping it cool, or at least trying to. And guess what? The Karen glare kicks in full force. She gives me that condescending once-over, like she's evaluating a trash can and deciding it's not worthy of her recyclables. Oh please, like it's my fault your piece of junk can't handle a little love tap. Maybe you should learn to park properly next time. She fires back, all attitude and sass. Now, I ain't one to let that kind of insult slide, but I'm trying to be civil here. Look lady, my car might not be a damn luxury sedan, but it sure as hell doesn't deserve this. And maybe if you could control your vehicle like a responsible adult, we wouldn't be in this mess, she scoffs, waving her hand like she's shooing away a fly. Responsible adult? Please, I don't have time for this. Call your insurance or whatever and let me get on with my fabulous day. Oh, it's on like Donkey Kong now. I can feel the rage bubbling, but I bite my tongue, for now. Insurance info exchanged, tempers flaring, and as she struts away with the grace of a flamingo on a tightrope, I can't help but think, this day just keeps getting better and better. So there I am, standing in the aftermath of the Karen hurricane, holding my phone like it's a lifeline. I dial up the good old cops, thinking they'll swoop in, do their thing, and justice will prevail. Oh, sweet naive me. As I'm chatting with Officer Friendly on the line, Karen catches wind of my 911 action. Panic sets in, and she morphs into a gazelle on adrenaline. Picture this. A woman in high heels attempting a sprint. It's a sight to behold, and by sight I mean a disaster waiting to happen. The sirens wail in the distance as she glances over her shoulder, her eyes wide with that "I've been caught" look. But instead of admitting defeat and facing the music, Karen decides she's the next Vin Diesel in the Fast and Furious franchise. In a move that would make any action movie director cringe, she hops into her slightly dented chariot, revs the engine like she's auditioning for NASCAR, and peels out of that gas station like her life depends on it. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Here's the plot twist. The universe has a sense of humor. Just as she's making her grand escape, the real heroes arrive, the cops. I point in the direction of the disappearing Karen mobile, and Officer Friendly looks at me like, "You've got to be kidding, what happens next is straight out of a comedy sketch." Karen, in her bid for freedom, forgets the basics of driving. As she swerves onto the road, she fails to notice the approaching police cruiser. Cue the dramatic slow-motion collision. The sound of metal meeting metal rings in the air as Karen's car does a little dance with the cop car. The universe, it seems, has a fondness for poetic justice. Officers spill out of the police car. Karen looks like she's seen a ghost, and I'm standing there with a front row seat to this circus of chaos. The cherry on top, Officer Friendly shoots me a look that says, "You called us for this." Oh, the joys of suburban drama. And just like that, the Karen escapade takes an unexpected turn. So there's Karen, now officially starring in her own real-life cop drama. The scene unfolds as the officers wrangle her out of her battered car like they're reeling in a particularly stubborn fish. And let me tell you, it's a glorious sight. The woman who thought she could outrun the law, now caught in the snare of justice. As they slap the cuffs on her, Officer Friendly gives me a nod, like we're in on some secret joke. The other officers, though, they're not holding back. They're giving Karen a piece of their mind, a roasting hotter than a summer barbecue. "Nice try, speed racer, thought you could outrun us, huh?" One cop chuckles, probably enjoying the unexpected twist in his mundane day. Karen, though, is doing her best indignant act. "This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to your supervisor. You people have no idea who you're dealing with." The cops exchange amused glances, and one of them deadpans, Yeah, tell it to the judge, drama queen." As they lead her away, Karen shoots me a death glare. I can practically hear her thinking of 1,000 creative ways to curse my existence. But hey, I'm not one to let a good story slip away, and I press those charges like my life depends on it. So Karen's headed for a cozy stay in the slammer. Justice served, right? But here's the kicker. As the officers drive away with her in tow, I catch a glimpse of Karma grinning like the Cheshire Cat. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, and Karen's got a hefty dose of comeuppance on her plate. As the dust settles, I can't help but revel in the sweet taste of victory. But something tells me this tale is far from over. So buckle up, readers, 'cause we're in for a ride, and Karen's got a front row seat to her own downfall. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. My sister Kay and I, who are 17 and 15 years old respectively, occasionally have to babysit our younger sister Riley, who is 7 years old. We are both very accustomed to taking matters into our own hands, since we are often the only ones available. This habit persists even when our mom and stepdad are present. Riley can be very sweet or extremely annoying, sometimes going out of her way to bother us depending on the circumstances. Things to note. I am a big fan of logical and natural consequences, and heavily dislike the idea of spanking or whipping. The reasons are clear. Spanking lacks real-world application, lasts only up to a certain age, and often does not relate to the crime. It also just doesn't make much sense. My mom knows this, so why she would think I would purposely hurt my sister for no reason is beyond me. I guess she thinks it was an overreaction, but I believe hers was an underreaction. I pay for my car and insurance, although he claims not to remember much of it now, and says it was a last resort. My sister Kay and I were frequently spanked and whipped by him and our dad while growing up. The kittens are currently staying with my other grandma. The reason they weren't immediately taken to the shelter is that it was closed when we found them. Since I'm not 18, I had to wait for someone who is to be available, and we were waiting for the mama cat to return, as they are still fairly little. Minor edit. For reasons listed below, there have been a couple of times when I've asked my mom if I can bring my boyfriend over, and she has given answers like, "I don't really want to have to deal with Riley's behavior," which is understandable to a point but shows just how crazy Riley gets around my boyfriend. My mom brought up my past as reasoning, and that may be a point, so I'll detail a little about it here. I had issues growing up with understanding that I played too rough, my sister purposely making me mad, and me taking out my anger physically. I also did not have the affection I have now for animals. I did put my hands on my sister Kay when I was younger, and I'm not proud of it now. I eventually learned that it solves nothing. This is one of two incidents like this. Before, any time a boyfriend was over, Riley would crawl all over him, embarrass herself as much as possible, and disregard personal space. One time, my boyfriend and I eventually left to go watch TV in my room, only to have Riley follow us and jump all over him. By this point, I had practically begged her and my mom to get her to leave us alone. I reacted to Riley's punching and playing by telling her she needed to leave or I would force her off the bed. She said, "Do it," or kept continuing what she was doing, so I did. I responded by pushing her or using my leg to push her off the bed. I did not kick her, although I used that word interchangeably before. I knew the force I used would not hurt her, and neither would the drop to the floor as it was low. But I didn't account for her leaning far back as she fell, which caused her to scrape her back. I'm not justifying my pushing. She pushed me to my limits, and I reacted purely with emotion. I do feel, though, that I should never have been pushed to that point, and that it could have been avoided had she just left us alone after making my boyfriend uncomfortable all evening. Kittens incident. I recently brought home kittens found under a dumpster with my mom's permission, intending to put them in a shelter. They were staying in Kay's room, which is small but manageable. Riley was, of course, very excited to see and play with the kittens, but she doesn't seem to understand that they are smaller than her, and she needs to be very careful around them. This brings the first of a long list of events into play, one of which I wasn't aware of as I was at work at the time. First day of having kittens ***, Kay was attending to the kittens in her room. Riley ended up throwing a kitten, which led Kay to ask her to leave after reprimanding her for doing so. Mom is aware of this. Second day of having kittens ***, Kay was at a friend's house during this time. I was playing with the kittens when Riley accidentally stepped on, sat on, leaned against, and kicked the kittens multiple times throughout her time there. Each time I reminded her that she needed to be careful and watch her step. Finally, I decided that accidental or not, it was happening too often. I let her know she needed to leave the room, and after attempting to convince me to let her stay, she left. I locked the door, knowing how persistent and resistant to listening Riley is. Not long after, my mom and Riley visited Kay's room to ask if I had kicked her out for the reasons listed above. My mom told me Riley had been taking care of one kitten for a good amount of time without issues, and that kittens are more durable than I think. She took a kitten to give to Riley, and Riley again accidentally stepped on a kitten before leaving. I had to tell Riley a couple more times to leave the kittens alone afterward. Later, I left to go to a friend's house with my mom watching the kittens and came back a few hours later. Later that day, between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., after I got out of the shower, I heard a kitten's yelp and Riley rambling around in the bedroom. I asked Riley if she had yet again stepped on a kitten, and she initially said no before admitting, "I did step on a kitten, but I didn't mean to. I'm sorry, but it was an accident." At this point, I was very fed up and told her she should have stayed out like I had asked her 20 times. In a probably not so smart decision, I stepped on her foot. I asked her how it felt, and told her this is what the kittens have been feeling while she's been carelessly trampling on them all day. She started bawling, ran out, and screamed to my mom. My mom called me, and I asked Riley why she was crying so loudly and profusely, which annoyed my mom very much. Through my mom's yelling, I explained what happened and why I did what I did. Riley had a red mark on her foot, and my mom said these weren't just hurt feelings, but that she was genuinely hurt. The conversation continued as follows. "I can't feel bad for her when she's been doing the same to the kittens all day," I said, which again made my mom mad. "I'll snap all of their necks," said my mom. "And I'll beat you up," I responded. I forgot what she said here, but it was something like bet, ha, or scoffing. "You need to find somewhere else for those kittens," said my mom. "All right," I replied. So I proceeded to pack my bags and the kittens, spending 15 to 30 minutes trying to find my key. My mom looked out to my car and asked, "Where do you think you're going with your car? Where do you think you're going with your car?" I ignored her and walked past, laughing about the irony of the question. She reached my sister Kay before I did, and Kay came to find out what was going on. After hearing, she helped me look for my key and learned from my mom that she had taken it. I had been looking for an hour by now. I ended up staying at Kay's friend's house as they live close by. Conclusion: this isn't all that happened yesterday, but I am very tired of this situation and others like it. We all tried having a conversation about it today, and I made some remarks and comments that I do feel bad about now. However, I can't stress how tired I am of Riley facing no consequences and being undermined when I'm the one left to watch her most of the time. Some points from the conversation include my mom saying that snapping the kittens' necks was just something said out of anger, which I knew since she also loves animals, I think. My stepdad said he wouldn't have said anything, he would have just done it, he wasn't mad at this point. He thinks what I did was borderline abuse, and my mom insinuated she thinks so too. My stepdad isn't mentioned much because he doesn't play a big role, which also seems to be an issue in a lot of areas. Small edit. My mom also said the reason she took the key is that even if we were arguing, I'm still her baby, and she wouldn't have let me leave at 10 p.m. to do something reckless. I was planning to leave the house permanently. I don't think the following things are significant right now, but I may add them later. The people I've talked to, who may be biased, all seem to agree on two things. I was out of line for stepping on Riley, and my mom was wrong for not dealing with it properly and allowing it to happen in the first place. So I'm a 21-year-old female. My parents are both white. They have several children and I am number 6. They adopted my little brother and me when we were babies. My brother and I are of mixed race, often referred to as light-skinned black. This story happened when I was in elementary school. Some backstory to help you understand my family. Being black and having a white family plus growing up in a white area was challenging. For instance, my brother and I had swim passes, so sometimes my mom would drop us off at the pool and my dad would pick us up. Frequently, he would be stopped and asked for proof that he was our dad. It also didn't help that my mom was 48 when I was adopted, having her last child at 40. With that, my oldest brother is 20 years older than me. So I have a nephew who is only a year younger than me, and a month younger than my little brother. We get weird looks when we are out in public, with my brother and me calling my mom Mom, and my nephew calling her Grandma. Often, people thought my older siblings were my parents. Now that you're all caught up, let's dive into the story. In elementary school, my mom worked as a Title I teacher. This means she would go to classes to help kids read. She still does this and did so the entire time my brother and I were in school. Most of my friends knew I was adopted. They probably just asked their parents why I looked different. One day, when I was in 4th grade, my mom came to my class. It was the first time that school year, so people didn't know she was my mom. I had a bad headache, so when she came in, I was relieved and shouted excitedly, "Mommy, can I have some medicine?" Some kids looked confused, but before I could explain, an entitled kid stated, "Sometimes when a white woman and black man make a baby, it comes out black." I was shocked, and as a little kid didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. I went over to my mom, and she gave me medicine she had in her bag. Cue the entitled kid, "I need some medicine too." My mother explained to her that she couldn't give her medicine because it was against school policy, and that she could give me medicine because she was my mom. The kid rolled her eyes and huffed back to her desk. We thought that was the end of it until the next morning. Each morning, all the Title I aides would meet in the library to organize their stuff and chat. I would often join them because I frequently had earaches from being outside. That's when the entitled mother came in. "You must be the N-word lover." All the teachers' mouths dropped. I didn't know what that word meant at the time, but I could tell it was bad from everyone's reactions. My mother told her not to use that language in front of me. The entitled mother rolled her eyes and began demanding to know why she wouldn't give her daughter some medicine if she was giving me some. My mother explained again. Then the entitled mother said, "So because you chose a black person and made a child, they get medical help over my baby." I could see my mother getting upset. "Again, if you continue to use that language, I'll have to get the principal involved." The entitled mother smiled. "Fine, let's do it." My mother and the entitled mother left, and I did not understand what was going on, so I called my dad and told him what happened. Now my mom is the nice, soft-spoken type. My dad, on the other hand, has an intense resting face and gets visibly angry when upset. My dad told me he was on his way. I waited in the front office for my parents. My dad arrived at the school before my mom came out. When he knocked on the door, the principal opened it, and the entitled mother saw my dad. When my dad entered, my mom said, "What are you doing here, hon?" The entitled mother's face looked like she had seen a ghost. "So is her daddy the milkman?" Again. I didn't know what that meant, but I could tell by my dad's face that he was not happy. The entitled mother said, "How else would she look like that?" gesturing at me, then turning to the principal. "I mean, she obviously isn't a good example for the children, so you should fire her for the children's sake." My dad started laughing, which I knew wasn't a good sign when he was mad. He told me to go find my brother and get my stuff, then they closed the door. The bell had already rung, so the front desk lady gave me a note and I went to my brother's class and got him. We both agreed to be on our best behavior since Dad was mad. We sat on the bench waiting, and then my parents came out. "Are you fired, Mom?" I asked. My mom smiled. "Of course not, but we are going home today to talk. Sweet, ditch day." My parents took us to Denny's for breakfast since we missed it because our school provided it. They explained to us that some people don't like the color of our skin, and that it was never okay for us to be called that. We got to stay home. The next day, I noticed the entitled kid was moved to another class, and found out the entitled mother was kicked out of the Parent-Teacher Association. Edit. I married a white man. He served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to New Zealand and the Cook Islands. Surprisingly, we were asked a lot if he brought me back from his mission. People are always asking me where I'm from. Well, we have a son, and he looks just like his dad but has my curls. So I get funny looks a lot, and people are always surprised I'm his mom. I've never faced intense racism until I was older, but I had experienced small things here and there. I've been told I talk and act like a white woman, not sure what that means. But when I say I was adopted and show a family picture, it seems to help make sense to people. Me 8 at the time and my sister Emily, 6 at the time, were with our parents at a Ross. Normally, me and my sister would go over to the toys and look at them for a bit before going back with our parents as soon as we were about to leave. This happened as we were about to leave at the end of the aisle our parents were at. We knocked something made of glass over, and we stood there in shock for a few seconds. We knew our parents were probably about to yell at us for not being careful. Then Karen came in. She starts yelling at us for knocking over the glass thing, and for being idiots. Unfortunately for us, we were in shock. My mom didn't speak English, and my dad was the only one that could say anything. I understand that we probably should have been more careful, but what happened next was a bit too much for me and my sister to handle. So we ended up crying. Since this happened when I was so little, I'll try to summarize it as best as possible. Karen, your kids are a bunch of idiots, Dad. Lady, it was an accident. We'll pay for it. Just please leave us alone. You should be kicked out. Just wait until the manager gets here. Then an employee or manager arrives. Employee. What seems to be the problem, Karen? These idiots knocked over something and deserve to be kicked out. Is that right, Dad? Yeah, my kids knocked that over, but we'll pay for it and the rest of our things, then leave the store if you'd like. I'm very sorry. Oh, it's all right. We'll get someone to clean it up. Please try to be more careful. One of you could get hurt. Hey, they knocked something over. Those are words. I remember this specifically because I didn't know what it was, and I asked my dad about it later. Deserve to be kicked out, employee. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You are disturbing the other customers and we can't have you yelling inside the store. Then Karen shrieks as she's getting kicked out of the store. My parents were acting very seriously as we were paying and getting into our car. Then once we get in, as we are still sobbing, my parents burst out laughing and give us candy and we head home. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.